Help support Name Explain by liking this video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel. Russia was named after the people who lived and settled the land, in this case being the Rus people. The Rus were a tribe of Vikings who are thought to have come from Sweden in the 9th century. Even though the lands of Russia were populated at the time, some scholars believe that the local people of the town of Novgorod in Russia asked them to come settle their disputes with each other. The Rus stayed in the land, founding cities and opening up trade routes around the country, so much so that by the 16th century we have evidence the land was called in medieval Latin Rusi, meaning the people of Russia. If Russia is named after the Rus people, then how did the Rus people get their name? It's thought their name comes from the Old Norse term lods, meaning men who row, as rowing was the main way the Rus and all other Vikings traversed the waters around them. If that sounded familiar to any of you, that's because I just plagiarized myself. This etymology of Russia is taken from my book, The Origin of Names, Words and Everything in Between. Link to purchase it in the description, hint hint, because why write a new etymology for Russia when I have a perfectly good one already? Anyway, if I were to ask you to point to the country called Russia on a map, I'm sure you would point here. I mean, it's a pretty big country and you'd be correct. This country is called Russia. However, you could also point here and be correct. Well, kinda. Nevertheless, you've fallen for my clickbait, so why not stick around? This is of course the country of Belarus. With an area of over 200,000 km squared, Belarus holds the unique title of Europe's largest landlocked country. It shares its border with 5 other countries, these being Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania and Russia. The nation has a population of around 9.5 million and its capital and largest city is of course Minsk, a name that will ring bells in the minds of many Friends fans. If you look at the name Belarus, I'm sure you will notice Rus at the very end. This Rus does in fact relate to the aforementioned Rus people who lent their name to the largest country on the planet. Though what about the Bela part of Belarus's name? This is believed to come from a Slavic root for white, which makes sense. If you look at other Slavic language words for white, they look very much like this. This means the name is often translated into meaning White Russia. And fun fact, in the past there were also land masses which had names that translated into Black Russia and Red Russia, though for today we aren't too interested in those. The earliest written evidence we have for this name comes from Latin and German literature of the 14th century, where it was referred to as Alba Russia. While we know the name can be translated to mean White Russia, why is this the case? The Russia part is obviously because this land, much like Russia, was settled by the aforementioned Rus people, though what exactly made these Rus white? Well, on that we aren't too sure, though we have a few theories. One theory has to do with the fact that it was the Rus in these lands that followed Christianity, and white is a colour that is heavily associated with Christianity. Go into any church and I'm sure you'll find plenty of white there. The second theory is simply because the Rus who lived in this land wore a lot of white clothing. It's a simple idea, but a lot of the time the simplest theories are the correct ones. The third theory relates to not the colour of the Rus' clothing, but the colour of their skin. At this time there was another tribe claiming land across Russia and Asia, the Tatars. These people supposedly originated from Mongolia, so they would not have been the same skin tone as the Rus. To signify this area wasn't run by these differently coloured people, it became known as White Russia. We don't know for sure what exactly made these Rus so white, but the name persevered and the country still bears it to this day, sharing the Russia part of its name with the actual country of Russia. Yet, despite the fact I built this video entirely around the concept that this country is also called Russia in some shape or form, this might not actually be the case. Yes, I know I'm the worst, go tell me how awful I am in the comment section, I live for your rage. This is because the Rus in Belarus may not refer to Russia, but instead refer to Ruthenia. Ruthenia being the name for another old area of Europe, with the name once again deriving from the Rus people. The Independent has an interesting article titled The Lost Nation of Ruthenia. Perhaps in some alternative history, a nation by the name of Ruthenia is still present on our globe. Anyway, while the Rus in Belarus definitely seems to relate to the Rus people, whether these were Ruthenian Ruses or Russian Ruses, we don't know. And just to make matters more confusing, I even read theories that the Bela part doesn't even mean white. One theory I read is that the Bela part comes from Germanic roots meaning west, which might seem odd at first as Belarus is east of Germany, but Belarus is also on the more western parts of the Rus land. I think it's that approach they were going for with this etymology. One very weird theory I also came across is that the country is named after a beautiful girl called Rus, and the Bela part comes from some old word for beautiful. While these theories exist, it seems that the idea of it meaning white is far more concrete and accepted. Meaning if we follow one certain etymological route for this country, then yes, we end up with a second country called Russia. Well, White Russia anyway. And if this name is making anyone thirsty, that's because there's a drink called a White Russian, a cocktail served with ice made with vodka, coffee liqueur and cream, which can often be replaced with milk. Despite the name, the drink wasn't invented in Russia or Belarus, but rather in Belgium by barman Gustav Tops in 1949. Initially it was called a Black Russian, but with the addition of cream and the change of colour in the drink thanks to the cream, White Russian was more fitting. Of course, the Russian part comes from the fact that it contains vodka, a very Russian drink, so despite the similar names, this White Russian has nothing to do with this White Russia. Belarus was suggested by Stephen Ellis, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explain's patron saint of Belarus. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explain video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explain Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Name Explain depends on small monthly donations from fans like you to help keep the channel running. Just a small amount of $2 a month helps in a huge way, grants you patron exclusive Name Explain extras, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you. Hello all and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Stick around and check out another video and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Name Explain. You can follow myself on Twitter at NameExplainYT. Follow me there and tweet the name Bella at me so I know you came from this message. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again thank you all so much.